When scientists first got their hands on this creature's video, they gasped. Some even thought the footage was fake. That is how strange this thing looks. It's called the black sea devil, but it didn't earn that name just for its looks. Once you know how it lives, you'll understand why. Let's start with where it lives, because that's the whole story. This fish spends its life in the deep ocean, down where sunlight never reaches. It's pitch black, freezing cold, and the weight of all that water above would crush you flat. Almost nothing can survive down there. You and I definitely wouldn't. But the black sea devil calls it home. Now think about this for a second. Imagine you're in a completely dark room and you get hungry. Just walking to the fridge would have you stumbling into furniture and tripping over your own feet. And that's with a fridge you know is there. Now imagine you had to hunt in that darkness, catching a living meal blind. So what do? You bring your own light. The female black sea devil has a little glowing lure that hangs in front of her mouth like a tiny lamp on a fishing rod. And it needs no electricity. Instead, tiny glowing bacteria live inside the lure and light it up for her. Small fish spot the glow in the dark, swim over to investigate, and swim straight into her jaws. And those jaws are no joke. This fish has a mouth full of long, needle-sharp teeth and a stretchy stomach, which means it can swallow prey bigger than its own body. In a place where food is rare, you eat whatever you can get, and you don't let it go. Now, here's the strangest part of all. The males? Everything I just described, that's only the female. The male is tiny, barely the size of your fingernail, with no glowing lure and no giant teeth. He has just one job. When he finds a female in that endless dark, he grabs onto her for a moment to help make babies, and then he swims away. For over 100 years, we only ever saw these fish lifeless, hauled up dead in nets. Then, off the coast of the Canary Islands, one appeared alive near the surface in broad daylight, for the first time ever caught on film. It didn't live long after, but for one moment we got to see a real sea monster out in the light where it was never supposed to be.
Okay, are you ready for an epic fight between two prehistoric predators? Well, hang on. Look at this creature. You know it. An ancient shark about 65 feet long that used to swim through the dark waters of the world's oceans and was so terrifying it had no enemies. Well, almost. Scientists have recently discovered the remains of another ancient predatory fish off the coast of Australia, a fish that lived around the same time as Megalodon. It was small, about the size of a dolphin, but it could pose a danger to the infamous shark. How is it possible if this creature was many times smaller? Well, let's take a look. This monster is called Janjucetus, and technically it wasn't exactly a fish. It was a distant relative of the modern baleen whale. Outwardly, it may seem quite cute, similar to that baleen whale I mentioned, but you wouldn't want to meet it in the ocean. It had the massive skull of a whale, large eyes the size of tennis balls, and a short snout with an immensely powerful jaw filled with razor-sharp teeth. In other words, it was like a shark version of the baleen whale. Janjucetus lived during an ancient period called the Oligocene, which was about 33 to 23 million years ago. At that time, there was an incredible abundance of life in the world's waters. Giant penguins, small whales, sharks 2 to 3 times larger than modern ones, primitive dolphin species, and many other unusual creatures. Now imagine that in this ancient and terrifying neighborhood, a giant megalodon met a Janjucetus. At first sight, it's not love. The megalodon's victory is obvious, but don't rush to write the Janjucetus off. It's agile and fast. It's quite possible that it was more mobile than Megalodon, and during the fight, it would have avoided a direct attack. The Megalodon would have lost sight of such a small opponent, while the Janjucetus would have swum up to the shark's belly and opened its jaws. They're small, but there are a lot of sharp teeth. Now, these teeth were designed to rip and cut. The Janducetus would attack the Megalodon with a small but very unpleasant bite, and the shark would have swum away after such a punch. But who knows? Maybe Megalodon would have immediately eaten Janducetus in the first seconds of the fight. Megalodon could have won, but in terms of speed and mobility, it would have lost. So let's look at something bigger, something that could actually have competed with Megalodon. It doesn't have to be a monster living at the same time as the ancient shark. We can make our own rules. Imagine that all ancient marine creatures ended up in the same pool with Megalodon. So its next opponent is the Liopleurodon. Now initially scientists thought that this monster could grow to be 82 feet long, which is even larger than Megalodon. But more accurate studies have shown that it only reached 32 feet, which is about the size of a modern orca. The Liopleurodon lived in the waters of Western Europe around 160 to 155 million years ago and shared territory with other dangerous reptiles such as ichthyosaurs and plesiosaurs. Yes, it was smaller than them, but it had one big advantage. The Liopleurodon possessed one of the largest jaws in the animal kingdom, which accounted for about 20% of the total length of its entire body. That's a mouth. Its jaws were about 6.5 feet long. A huge, toothy mouth the size of an adult basketball player filled with smooth and dagger-sharp teeth, ideal for cutting steaks and peeling ammonite shells. And by the way, scientists suspect that ammonites and squid were the creature's main diet. This super predator was also a very fast and agile creature that ambushed and attacked its prey from below. Megalodon would have been in big trouble. The grip strength of a Liopleurodon would surely be more powerful than that of Megalodon. Besides, the Liopleurodon's size and mobility would allow it to attack the enemy from different sides. It's probably why Megalodon would have lost in that fight. The next opponent for our Megalodon is the Dunkleosteus, and to be honest, this guy has almost no chance of defeating the large ancient shark. But the Megalodon probably wouldn't have beaten it either. The Dunkleosteus was one of the earliest predators of the ocean. It lived in the late Devonian, about 382 to 358 million years ago. Its size was about 13 to 32 feet or even less. And it also had no teeth. What? A predator without teeth? How did it survive in a dangerous prehistoric world? Well, it grabbed and chewed food with the help of special jaw growths. Those growths were so powerful that they could pierce steel, if there was any around. In a sense, these were not teeth, but bones. Okay, let's say the Megalodon grabbed this predator by the belly and it couldn't do anything with its growths. But the problem is that the Megalodon would have hardly done anything either, because the Dunkleosteus was a heavily armored fish. Just look at this shell. It probably limited its mobility, but it provided incredible protection. This monster felt like a big stone in the teeth of the Megalodon. It's unlikely that the Megalodon would have wanted to chew this stone. It would have spit it out, and both predators would have gone about their business. We've got a draw here. And now, the final match. Here's the next opponent. Do you see anything? Is this enemy invisible? What's happening? Ah, there it is. Meet the Telemonstrum. It's a tiny ancient monster just 11 inches long. Huh? What can it do to a giant shark? Next to the Megalodon, the Telemonstrum is like a box of matches compared to a human. But if the Megalodon had had a developed brain, like people do, it would have been very scared of this creature and would have immediately swum away. Many people scream and run away in fear when they see a creepy insect crawling or flying, or when a mouse runs across the floor. Some of us jump on the couch in horror. Not all of us, but some. The Megalodon would have jumped out of the water like a dolphin if the Telemonstrum had charged at it. Just check it out. It looks like an underwater bike with a long trunk with a jaw at the end. And these handlebars, where you would put your hands to control your bike, are the eyes. It's like the eyes of a hammerhead fish, only thinner and longer. The body of a squid, cuttlefish fins, snail eyes, and a toothed proboscis. This is a horror movie character. Scientists say it probably hunted jellyfish, small fish, and shrimp. And it didn't chew the food, it licked it like ice cream. Obviously, it's not an opponent for the Megalodon, but it's still a creepy monster. Well, what would have happened had it really started a fight with a megalodon? It would have been difficult for the ancient shark to find it. It would have been unlikely to catch this tiny monster in the mouth, and the Telemonstrum wouldn't have been able to do anything to the megalodon either. However, I can think of one strategy. The creepy creature had a long trunk. What if it had just swum under the megalodon's fin and started licking it? If the shark had felt the tickles, then it would probably have worked. But most likely, they wouldn't have fought each other. It seems like they would have made perfect friends. The Telemonstrum lived about 300 million years ago in shallow seas and estuaries that covered the territory of the U.S. When scientists discovered this creature in 1955, they were shocked because no one had any idea what it was. Experts compared it to worms, tunicates, conodonts, mollusks, and vertebrates. And do you know who it really was? Well, scientists still have no idea. They can't determine its place on the tree of evolution. Perhaps this is some new branch, and its descendants simply haven't survived to this day. The megalodon was one of the most dangerous predators on Earth. But now we know that other equally scary monsters lived in the oceans. But what if the megalodon lived today? Who could have defeated him? A blue whale who would be even bigger than this ancient shark. But the blue whale seems to be a kind animal. It wouldn't fight. How about the kraken? The kraken versus the megalodon? Well, let's save this fight for another video.
You know, it's pretty tough to come up with something original when you've never seen it before. But what about those creepy mythical creatures then? Werewolves, vampires, or let's say, cyclopses? Don't worry, cyclops as we picture them never actually roamed the Earth, as far as I know. But their creation definitely had some real-world inspiration. Turns out, ancient tales of these one-eyed giants might have been stirred up by a certain animal: dwarf elephants. Let's rewind to the Pleistocene era. It's where the inspiration for Cyclops lies. When sea levels were lower, animals could waltz from one island to another. Elephants and mammoths were just chilling together. But then the Ice Age ended, and ice melted, and bam! Those land bridges were underwater, leaving some animals stranded. With food running low, smaller elephants had the best chance at survival, leading to dwarf versions that were just about 3 feet tall at the shoulder. Now, here's where it gets interesting. When those little elephants passed away, they left behind skeletons that might have looked like a giant with a single eye. The trunk, which is soft and doesn't fossilize well, was gone. And without tusks, the skulls could totally resemble something out of a monster mash. Yikes! So when the Greeks showed up and stumbled upon these skulls, they could have thought they had stumbled upon massive creatures with a single eye. And poof! The legend of the Cyclops was born. Remember that cute cartoon about a mermaid? Well, sorry to break your pink glasses, but the true story didn't end happily. The Little Mermaid and Eric did not tie the knot. In Hans Christian Andersen's original fairy tale, the Little Mermaid is faced with the choice to slay the prince. However, when it's time to act, she discovers that she is unable to harm him. Instead, she chooses to sacrifice herself to save him, ultimately turning into sea foam. Right, but where does the mermaid character come from? Hans Christian Andersen wasn't the first to dream up mermaids. Long ago, people thought the ocean was full of all kinds of mythical beings, like krakens and sea serpents, adding a bit of mystery to the waters. The earliest known half-fish, half-human character is Wanus, a Babylonian deity from the 4th century BCE, who swam ashore by day and returned to the sea at night. Similarly, ancient Greek sirens, initially depicted as birdwomen, lured sailors to their demise in Homer's Odyssey. Over time, they've turned into the fish-tailed mermaids we know today, with the word siren now often meaning mermaid in several languages. Traditionally, they're wicked. Sure, mermaids are just make-believe, but their stories can grab people's imagination. Like Christopher Columbus. When he sailed in 1492, he swore he saw a mermaid. Spoiler alert, it was actually a manatee, which is basically the original sea cow. And they're not even that much of fish, they're closer relatives to elephants. Now, it might seem strange to mix up a lazy sea creature with a gorgeous half-fish lady, but it's not just Columbus who made that mistake. That's why manatees and their cousins, dugongs, are grouped together in Sirenia. In Japanese folklore, certain animals are attributed with supernatural qualities believed to affect human affairs. These entities fall under the category of yokai, specifically known as henge or shapeshifters. The most notable among these creatures are the cunning fox spirits called kitsune and the tanuki. Let's tackle this one step at a time. If you Google tanuki, you'll get a bunch of adorable pics in Google Images. The reason for that is simple. It is indeed tanuki in Japanese, but in English, we should say Japanese raccoon dog if we want to refer to an actual animal. However, the word tanuki can have two meanings, both an actual animal and its folklore namesake. The mythical version, called bake tanuki, pops up in stories and legends all over Japan, while tanuki are real animals. Bake tanuki are portrayed as quirky, supernatural beings. In some areas, the tanuki is said to have shape-shifting abilities, similar to those of foxes. It can become anything or anyone, and some stories even claim that it can possess humans. Now, kitsune are inspired by foxes. Their looks speak for themselves. These magical animals get wiser and more powerful as they age. Just like tanuki, they can shapeshift into humans or other forms, and they're known for their tricks. While some stories talk about kitsune playing pranks, others show them as loyal friends or even lovers. Back in ancient Japan, foxes and humans hung out a lot, leading to all sorts of legends. By the way, the number of tails a kitsune has is the key. The more tails, up to 9, the older and more powerful it is. Some folks even make offerings to them as if they were deities. I mean, who wouldn't want a wise fox on their side? Today, dire wolves are widely recognized due to their connection with the Stark kids in Game of Thrones. However, these creatures were not merely a product of the show's creators' imagination. Much larger than contemporary wolves, dire wolves inhabited the Americas until their extinction around 10,000 years ago. Over 4,000 fossilized remains of these animals were unearthed at the La Brea tar pits in Los Angeles, where they may have become trapped while scavenging on the remains of other animals that had fallen in. The dire wolf had an exceptionally large skull, yet its brain was smaller compared to that of modern wolves. If they had possessed larger brains, they might have been more discerning and recognized the dangers posed by the tar pits. Additionally, while there is no record of albino dire wolves, albino cubs have been documented among modern wolves. Check out this creepy sea serpent with multiple heads. It's called the Hydra in Greek mythology, and according to the legend, one of its 9 heads was immortal. So every time you lopped one off, 2 more popped up. Hercules had to take on this beast as one of his biggest challenges, and his nephew lent a hand. While Hercules was busy playing whack-a-mole with the heads, his nephew was cauterizing the wounds to stop them from coming back. Eventually, he managed to chop off the immortal head and buried it under a hefty rock. Believe it or not, this wild story might have had a basis in reality. There are a few documented cases of snakes with multiple heads, though 9 is pretty rare. Reptiles seem to be more prone to this kind of thing compared to other animals. Still, no records about one of those heads being immortal. Duh. Giants have been a part of stories forever. Take Greek mythology, for example. There's the Gigantus, a wild crew of 100 giants that sprang from Gaia after she had had a rough breakup with Uranus. Not exactly a fairy tale, right? Then there's Ergelmir from Norse mythology, who was born when icy Niflheim waters mixed with the fiery heat of Muspelheim. Now let's switch gears to real-life giants. Some folks had a condition called hereditary gigantism, which helps explain the tales of these towering figures. Scientists think they found a gene linked to it. Plus, some people have pituitary tumors that kick growth hormones into overdrive. Take Goliath, for example. He was reportedly over 9 feet tall. There's no universal height for a giant since it varies by culture. A study even suggested that Goliath might have had a genetic background contributing to his size. When David took him down with a slingshot, he hit Goliath right in the forehead. Imagine if Goliath had a pituitary tumor messing with his eyesight. It would have been a classic case of "didn't see that one coming." And speaking of giants, meet Robert Wadlow, the tallest guy ever recorded. He stood at an insane 8 feet 11.1 inches and weighed 439 pounds. Basically, a human reindeer. As a kid, he was always the tallest. At 8, he was already as tall as his father, and by 9, he could carry him around. By graduation, he had hit 8 feet 4 inches.
Now, you can't find living dinosaurs nowadays, which is a good thing, mostly, but you can still meet some creatures that might have gone to lunch with them. The frilled shark, for example, is a living fossil that comes from a family of sharks that have been around for about 80 million years. One of the coolest things about it is its long, eel-like body that can grow as long as 6 feet. It has 6 pairs of gills on its throat, which help the frilled shark breathe in the deep, cold ocean where there isn't much oxygen. The shark can move very quickly, like a snake, to catch its prey when it least expects it. Little frilled sharks take an exceptionally long time to grow, up to 3.5 years, which is one of the longest times for any animal with a backbone. The Chinese giant salamander is another living fossil that can tell you what was going on Earth around 170 million years ago. Now, when I say tell, I really mean it, as it can make sounds like hisses, whistles, and barks, and even a noise that sounds like a crying kid. The biggest Chinese salamander found so far weighed 130 pounds, as heavy as 2 Dalmatians, and was almost 6 feet long. Giant salamanders like to be alone. Hey, I want to be alone. And will chase away other salamanders from their space, except when it's time to start a family. During the day, they hide and sleep under rocks. They can make a special substance from their skin that keeps predators away. Now, gharials are reptiles that have been around for about 38 million years. They live in India and Nepal in slow-moving, muddy rivers. Sadly, there are very few gharials left in the wild, less than 100. These creatures can't control their body temperature, so they need to sunbathe to get warm or cool down in the water if they get too hot. Their eyes are close together and face forward, which helps them see in 3 dimensions and judge distances more accurately. Gharials also have a transparent third eyelid that protects their eyes when they're underwater. They have over 100 sharp teeth, but they can't chew their food. Instead, they use their strong jaws to grab prey and then, swallow it whole. The alligator gar is a fish that has a family history of more than 100 million years. It still has some cool features from ancient times, like being able to breathe both air and water. It also has a special spiral-shaped intestine, like a shark. The alligator gar is one of the biggest and heaviest fish in North America. Just like an alligator, it has a long body and snout, plus a row of sharp teeth. But instead of legs, the gar has fins to help it swim underwater. The tuatara isn't a lizard as you might think, and isn't a dinosaur either. This New Zealand resident is one of the most unique animals in the world. Scientists love studying tuataras because they can help us understand how today's lizards and snakes evolved. One of the coolest things about the tuatara is its third eye, called a parietal eye, on its head. It has its own lens, retina, and a nerve that connects it to the brain. Scientists think it might help the tuatara know when it's light or dark outside and absorb sunlight to make vitamin D or help them keep their body temperature exactly right. Tuataras can live an extraordinarily long time, up to 100 years. Cassowaries are the youngsters on our list, as they've been around for only 60 million years. They have some things in common with dinosaurs, like their 3-toed feet and how they breathe. Cassowaries love to eat fruit, lots and lots of fruit. This love of fruit helps the rainforest, because when cassowaries eat the fruit, their bodies don't harm the seeds inside. As they move around the forest, they spread these seeds, you can guess how, with their own natural fertilizer, helping new plants grow. Cassowaries are big birds, about 6 feet tall and weigh over 100 pounds. they have a special claw on each foot that is 5 inches long, and they can use it to kick real fast. If they feel threatened, they can charge, kick, and even jump on someone. They can also leap up to 5 feet in the air. So, the best thing to do is stay far, far away from where they live. The order Notostraca is a group of crustaceans that you may know as tadpole shrimp or shield shrimps. These animals have been around for about 360 million years. They have a wide, flat shell that covers their head, and they have a pair of eyes on top. These creatures can be found all over the world in different kinds of water, like freshwater, brackish water, and even salty pools. They can also look different depending on where they live. Notostracans aren't picky eaters and can snack on pretty much anything, from plants to small animals and other shrimps. Some of them are considered pests in places like California rice paddies because they stir up the mud, which blocks sunlight from reaching the young rice plants. Sturgeons are some of the largest fish species on the planet. They live only in the cool waters of the northern hemisphere and never travel below the equator. Even though they are huge, sturgeons don't have teeth. They eat by sucking food off the bottom of rivers, gulfs, lakes, and oceans. Scientists believe that sturgeons came from a group of fish that first appeared around 419 million years ago, long before dinosaurs even existed. Their ancestors survived a big extinction event that wiped out 90% of all species and went on to become the largest fish in many rivers in North America and Eurasia. Sturgeons can live up to 100 years old or even older. Female sturgeons can lay up to 3 million eggs at a time, but not all of the eggs eventually turn into real fish. Our next hero, the Pacific lamprey, has successfully lived through at least 4 mass extinctions. Its ancient ancestors evolved over 450 million years ago. These creatures have cartilage instead of bones and a third eye, which is a special light-sensing organ on top of their heads. Instead of a regular jaw, they have a mouth surrounded by teeth. They latch onto prey and sup up body fluids like real underwater vampires. And although he wasn't living underwater, the story goes that King Henry I of England might have lost his life because of a lamprey. The English monarch loved this fish so much that he defied doctors' orders to stop eating its flesh. He got sick every time he'd have it, but the lack of bones and the unusual taste made the royal fall in love with it. As a result, he got some scary symptoms from eating lamprey and eventually passed away. Can you say clueless? The elephant fish, also called the Australian ghost shark, has been on Earth for around 400 million years. Even though they're related to sharks, they aren't actually sharks. Instead of bones, their bodies are made entirely of cartilage. These fish have a special shiny tissue in their eyes that can make their eyes look like they change color from yellow to green. Elephant fish can be pretty tough and will fight back if they feel threatened. They like to be alone and usually don't hang out with other fish. Horseshoe crabs also deserve the title of survival champs, as they've been around even before dinosaurs, since 450 million years ago. 4 species are still roaming the ocean from Maine all the way to Mexico. Horseshoe crabs are more like spiders than ticks than they are like real crabs. They have 9 eyes, plus extra light sensors near their tails, so they can see really well. They breathe underwater using flap-like gills near their belly, and sometimes they use these gills to swim upside down. Every spring, when the tide is high, these creatures come up to the beach at night to mate and lay their eggs, and you can see hundreds of thousands of them.
Today, I'm going to tell you about creatures that had unique features which allowed them to grow to incredible sizes. They were some of the most impressive animals to have ever existed on our planet. The Argentinosaurus is a genus of sauropod dinosaurs that lived approximately 97 million years ago in what is now South America. Scientists think it was one of the largest land animals ever, with a length of up to 100 feet and a weight of up to 100 tons. A farmer stumbled upon a giant leg bone while tending his cattle. That's how he discovered the first fossils of the Argentinosaurus in Argentina in 1987. Further excavations uncovered more bones, revealing a massive dinosaur that would have dwarfed most other animals of its time. The Spinosaurus, meaning spine lizard, is a genus of theropod dinosaur that lived around 97 million years ago in what is now North Africa. It is believed to be one of the largest carnivorous dinosaurs to ever exist, with a length of up to 60 feet and a weight of up to 23 tons. The Spinosaurus is known for its distinctive elongated sail-like structure on its back. It was likely used for thermoregulation. It also had long crocodile-like jaws that were lined with sharp teeth. This allowed the creature to catch and eat large prey, such as fish, crocodiles, and other dinosaurs. The first fossils of the Spinosaurus were discovered in Egypt in 1912. The sperm whale, Physeter macrocephalus, is a species of toothed whale that is the largest toothed predator on Earth. It also has the largest brain of any animal species. It is found in oceans all over the world and can dive to depths of up to 7,000 feet in search of food. You can easily recognize sperm whales by their massive, block-shaped heads, which can measure up to 1/3 of their total body length. They have dark brown or grayish-blue skin and a distinctive wrinkled appearance. The Titanoboa is an extinct genus of a giant snake that lived approximately 58 million years ago. It is considered to be the largest known snake ever. It could grow up to 42 feet and weighed around 2,500 pounds. The first fossils of the Titanoboa were discovered in a coal mine in Colombia in 2004. This discovery meant a lot because it provided insights into the size and behavior of snakes during the Paleocene era, as well as the overall climate and ecosystem of the time. The blue whale, Balænoptera musculus, is the largest animal on Earth, measuring up to 100 feet in length and weighing as much as 200 tons. These marine mammals are found in oceans all over the world and can live up to 90 years. Blue whales have a long, streamlined body that is usually blue-gray in color with mottled patterns. They have a small dorsal fin and 2 pectoral fins that are about 1/3 the length of their body. Blue whales feed on tiny shrimp-like creatures called krill, and they eat a lot. A single adult blue whale can eat up to 8,000 pounds of krill in a day. The Leadsichthus is an extinct genus of large, bony fish that lived during the Jurassic period, approximately 155 million years ago. It is believed to be one of the largest fish that have ever lived. Some estimates suggest that it could grow up to 55 feet in length. The first fossils of Leadsichthus were discovered in England in the 19th century, and more recent discoveries have been made in other parts of Europe, South America, and Africa. Despite its enormous size, the Leadsichthus was a filter feeder, similar to modern-day whale sharks, and likely fed on plankton and other small organisms. The creature did it by simply swimming with its enormous mouth open, filtering water through its gills. The pterodostro is an extinct species of flamingo-like birds that lived approximately 35 million years ago. They were relatively small birds with a wingspan of about 2-3 feet. And they were known for their distinctive long, narrow beaks equipped with comb-like structures used for filter feeding. The pterodostro lived in shallow bodies of water, like lakes and lagoons, and mostly fed on small crustaceans and other tiny organisms. The animal filtered them from the water using the comb-like structures on the inside of its beak while swimming through the water. The African elephant is the largest land animal on Earth and one of the most recognizable ones. There are 2 species of the African elephant, the savanna elephant, Loxodonta africana, and the forest elephant, Loxodonta cyclotis. You can see them in various parts of sub-Saharan Africa. These creatures can be identified by their large size, gray skin, and long trunks. African elephants can grow up to 13 feet tall and weigh up to 14,000 pounds, depending on the species and gender.
Wanna high-five a sea creature? Well, put your hand up for the Tasmanian red handfish. This fish doesn't swim like a fish. It walks. It uses its flipper-like hands to stroll around on the ocean floor. These bottom walkers are disturbed by swimmers and boats a lot. Some people even want to take them home as pets. I think it's better to just give them a wave and swim on by. the vampire squid. Its species name is Vampiroteuthis infernalis, which translates to vampire squid from hell. Oh yes, this vampire squid means to terrify everyone with its name, its dark red color, its spikes at the bottom, and the scary fact that it can basically turn itself inside out. The vampire squid loves putting on a good show, but it's as harmless as a kitten is to humans. It's as if Dracula scared the pants off you, but he didn't have blood-sucking fangs. The vampire squid feeds on food particles from plants and animal matter floating near the ocean's surface. Since they're not predators, they need good defensive strategies, and their vampiric look is designed to ward off large creatures who want to eat them. Turning themselves inside out is a defensive mechanism since the spiky areas in the inner skin are more intimidating. They also shoot out a substance that does not have color, but is packed with bioluminescent particles to distract predators. The vaquita. Going out on a boat off the coast of Mexico sounds like the perfect vacation. The sun, the blue water, the most endangered sea creature. Wait, what? The vaquita isn't dangerous, but don't expect it to stick around to say hello or sign any autographs. It's incredibly shy. This little cow, that's what it means in Spanish, is one tiny sea mammal. With those black markings around its eyes, it looks more like a sea panda to me. Seeing one should make you feel very special. They're on the brink of extinction, mostly because they got caught by accident in fishing nets. It's estimated that there's only 10 left in the wild. The blue dragon. This little creature looks like something out of a kid's fantasy movie. It's called the blue glaucus, casually referred to as the blue dragon or blue angel. It can be found in many places, the Atlantic, Pacific, and Indian Oceans. It's kind of a mollusk and it only grows to be about an inch long. What you think is the back is actually the mollusk's bright underbelly. It regularly floats on its back so that its blue colors help it camouflage with the water's waves. The blue dragon isn't just pretty, it's also smart. It usually feasts on Portuguese man-o'-wars, also known as Physalia physalis. The blue dragon stores their stinging cells for later use, in essence, stealing their defensive mechanisms. When the blue dragon is threatened, it releases those stinging cells it stored, directing them at an enemy to sting them with more power than the Portuguese man-o'-war would have been capable of. As they can store a huge amount of stinging cells, they can be a threat to humans. So, if you find one, don't pick it up. It's best to admire it from a distance. The barrel-eye fish. If you ever wanted to have Superman's X-ray vision, looking at the barrel-eye fish will make you feel like you gained that superpower at some point in your life without even realizing it. The barrel eye has a transparent head, so you can see how their eyes and brain look inside. This magnificent creature lives in the deep sea. This is the lowest level of the ocean, where strange creatures roam in near-freezing temperatures and constant darkness. They're exposed to water's pressure that's almost 1,000 times that of the surface. If the idea of the deep sea sends a shiver down your spine, stay tuned to learn about another of its creatures later on. The barrel-eye fish can be found in the Atlantic, Pacific, and Indian Oceans. You might be wondering, why oh why would a fish have a see-through head? And that would be a fair question. Since the species was discovered in 1939, it was believed that the fish's eyes were set to see straight ahead and couldn't move. So it was assumed that they had tunnel vision. Scientists Bruce Robinson and Kim Reisenbichler from the Monterey Bay Aquarium Research Institute recently discovered that the fish can move its eyes vertically to see through the top of its translucent head, thus noticing if there are predators or prey nearby. The transparent head also allows more light to enter so they can detect prey better. It's believed that the barrel-eye fish eats jellyfish and small fish species. If you dive in the ocean at night, you might be lucky enough to see how orange ball corallomorph blooms in the dark. But make sure to be quick because as soon as you turn on your flashlight to take a good look, it will retract its tubes back into itself. The megalodon. The whale shark isn't the biggest shark known to humans. If the entire shark species were a kingdom, the prehistoric megalodon would be the ruler of the sea. Megalodon roamed the ocean a long time ago. About 15.9 to 2.6 million years back between the early Miocene and late Pliocene eras. While they've long been extinct, people are still amazed to learn about these gigantic sea beasts. Megalodon could reach anywhere between 45 feet to 60 feet in length with jaws more than 6 feet wide. A fossil of a tooth that once belonged to a megalodon measured at 7 inches. Needless to say, I'm pretty stoked that these guys have long been extinct. But there's still some adventurers out there hoping to meet this monster one day. The Dumbo octopus. This adorable creature, or creepy creature, or however you want to see it, is officially called Grimpoteuthis. More casually, it's referred to as the Dumbo octopus, named after the Disney character. Though Dumbo, the elephant, not the octopus, was teased for his big ears, it's highly unlikely that this adorable octopus gets teased by its water neighbors. They are the deepest living octopuses, living in the deep sea, and you know how scary that place is. They're only about 8 inches tall and spend their days hovering just above the seafloor eating snails, worms, and other food they find in the current or near ocean vents. There are nearly 17 species of Dumbo octopus, and they all have differences in height, color, and body parts. If you can't get enough strange animals, you'll be glad to learn that the deep sea has barely been explored by humans. So keep an eye out. There are bound to be more fascinating animals discovered in the deep in the future. The sea angel. These creatures might look and sound pretty cute, but their diet is far from sunshine and lollipops. Their favorite food are sea butterflies. They lay mucus traps for them and wait in ambush. The squat anemone shrimp. This shrimp is tiny, only 0.5 inches. It's also known as a dancer shrimp because of its peculiar behavior. When agitated, it raises its bottom above its head and does a little dance. Divers also say it readily jumps on their hands and cleans them. The coconut crab. This guy may look pretty creepy, especially when the sun goes down. Mature coconut crabs are around 3 feet in length. Their preferred foods are coconuts, but they can also hunt down lizards and even large birds. The slender snipe eel. Slender snipe eel is a slim and long creature that's still a mystery for marine scientists. It's 4 feet long and it has at least 750 bones in its spine, which is much more than any other animal in the world. The sea pen. Sea pen is 7 feet long and it has a lot of varieties, but most of them look indeed like a pen or a quill. The similarity is even more striking when the animal has a water-filled bulb that anchors it to the floor. The Persian carpet flatworm. This creature looks indeed like a carpet, despite being very small by comparison. It's only 4 inches long, able to become both male and female. It doesn't really mate with other flatworms. Rather, it fights them for the right to bear posterity. The flamingo-tongued sea snails. Tourists love these extraordinary snails for their pretty colors, thinking it's a shell, but in fact, the shell is quite dull and hidden underneath colorful soft tissues. They eat softer, toxic parts of corals and store their toxins to protect themselves.
Think you know what lurks in the depths of the ocean? While nearly 95% of our oceans haven't been explored yet, it's hard not to let your imagination run wild. But thanks to brave explorers, deep-sea cameras, and awesome archaeologists, we do know about some pretty incredible sea creatures living in our waters today, and millions of years ago. From the 9-foot spider crab to the 60-foot prehistoric megalodon, these sea dwellers come in all shapes and sizes. But let's focus on sea creatures famous for their huge size. Can you guess which living species of whale is the largest? Well, it's not the orca, but that's a good guess. The orca is a toothed whale that can grow to anywhere from 23 feet to 32 feet, which is slightly smaller than a school bus. How about the narwhal? Nope, they're not the biggest either. These unicorns of the sea live mainly in Arctic waters and only grow 13 feet to 20 feet in length, and that's including their 9-foot tusk. Tired of guessing? Okay, I give in. The largest whale that still exists today is the blue whale. At a jaw-dropping 82 feet to 105 feet, the blue whale is not only the biggest whale we know of, but is currently the largest animal to have ever lived on Earth. Seriously. These animals are bigger than a T-Rex, and even the prehistoric megalodon. If you were to put a blue whale next to a school bus, it would look like it could swallow it. Think about that. According to National Geographic, A blue whale's tongue can weigh the same as an elephant. And their hearts can weigh as much as a car. That doesn't even sound possible. It's no wonder these giants need to eat about 4 tons of krill every day. While there aren't too many animals living today that can compete with the blue whale's epic proportions, there is an entirely different species that is a good contender, and it's not quite what you would expect. It's a jellyfish. No, I'm not talking about the little jellyfish that wash up on the shore and ruin a perfectly good day at the beach. I'm referring to the lion's mane jellyfish, the biggest jellyfish around. This invertebrate can grow up to 120 feet long. They also come in different gorgeous colors like red, purple, or even shades of orange. As if their length wasn't impressive, the lion's mane jellyfish boast a whopping 8 sets of 70 to 150 tentacles. That means they can have up to 1,200 in total. And here's the giant oceanic manta ray, the largest type of ray in the world. Their wingspan can be longer than a bus. These guys can reach 30 feet in length. They also have the biggest brain compared to body size among all fish. Unlike their stingray cousins, mantas don't have venomous tails. And while the lion's mane jellyfish and the blue whale are yet to be beaten for the longest sea creature, there is one marine creature that can grow even larger in length. The Portuguese Physalia physalis, tentacles and all, can reach a length of 165 feet long, and that's according to mentalfloss.com. While this thing may look a lot like a jellyfish, it's actually known as a siphonophore, and there are hundreds and sometimes thousands of them that are genetically identical. Their long tentacles help the organism catch prey, and its sting is fatal to most animals, even humans in some cases. What's even creepier is that if one of the tentacles comes off the organism for whatever reason, it can float around the water for days before decomposing. Even if it's detached, this tentacle can still sting you. But don't go running out of the ocean just yet. Your chances of being hurt by a Portuguese Physalia physalis sting are pretty slim. However, if you do get stung, the side effects aren't pretty, with welts, stomach cramps, an elevated heart rate, and an upset stomach. While you don't want to go anywhere near these long creatures, they sure are pretty to look at. Check out all those colors. The Shastasaurus is the biggest marine reptile that has ever existed. These predators lived during the late Triassic period, about 210 million years ago. These amazing giants could reach lengths of up to 69 feet and weighed more than 75 tons. This made the Shastasaurus as heavy as a blue whale. And if you could stand this creature up vertically, it'd be as tall as a 7-story building. Despite appearances, the Shastasaurus was actually pretty slim for its size. Its ribcage was only 6 feet across. You'd think that this big guy was chowing down on other dinosaurs, but that's not the case at all. This reptile survived on a diet that consisted of small fish and cephalopods, like octopuses and squids. The Albertonectes is a bright representative of the plesiosaur family, meaning that this marine reptile had a small head on an incredibly long neck and large flipper-like limbs that helped it move through the water. These creatures occupied the seas around North America 76 to 70 million years ago. The length of this sea monster could reach 38 feet, with its neck taking up 23 feet of that length. Its neck was a true record breaker. It had a whopping 76 bones in it. No other animal known to humankind has had so many vertebrae in its neck. Scientists aren't sure why they needed such a lengthy neck. They might have used it to collect shellfish off the seabed, or perhaps it helped them capture their main prey, fish and squids. This aquatic reptile also had gastroliths in its stomachs. Some of them were as big as 5.5 inches in diameter. The Tylosaurus belonged to the Mosasaur family. It dominated the shallow seas of North America about 85 to 80 million years ago. This was an enormous predator, with the biggest representatives reaching 45 feet in length. It had a narrow hydrodynamic body with a blunt, powerful head that the animal used to ram and stun its prey. Its body was equipped with agile flippers and a long tail decorated with a maneuverable fin. The Tylosaurus was a carnivore, and its diet included not only fish, turtles, and small sharks, but also other mosasaurs, plesiosaurs, and flightless birds. Meet Ophthalmosaurus. This prehistoric reptile thrived during the late Jurassic period and lived in oceans all over the world. Ophthalmosaurus weighed somewhere around 6,000 pounds and grew to approximately 16 feet long, according to newdinosaurs.com. That's about the same length as the beluga whale that exists today. It's too bad these guys went extinct before we had a chance to see them ourselves, as their cartoonish wide eyes and dolphin-like features are pretty darn cute. Of course, the Ophthalmosaurus evolved over time to become ophthalmologists, or eye doctors that we know today. No, that's just a lie. Just testing you. The Mosasaurus is a truly gigantic predator that dominated the seas all over the world about 66 million years ago. According to fossil evidence, some specimens could be more than 50 feet in length. This fact makes the Mosasaurus the biggest marine carnivore of its time. One of the most terrifying things about this creature was its crocodile-like head, decorated with literally hundreds of razor-sharp teeth, neatly organized in 2 rows on both jaws. The thing is that it was pretty challenging for the Mosasaurus to grab its prey in the water. That's why it had all these teeth, plus something special: pterygoid teeth anchored to the bones on the roof of its mouth. This made hunting and holding onto its prey much easier. The Styxosaurus belonged to the plesiosaur family and lived during the late Cretaceous period, around 85 to 70 million years ago. Upon first glance at this dinosaur, you might mistake it for a sea snake, and it'd be an honest mistake. Styxosauruses were about 35 feet in length, but over 16 feet of that consisted just of their long snake-like neck. They had a comparatively small body and weighed approximately 4 tons. Their mouths were full of razor-sharp cone-shaped teeth that they used to catch fish. They didn't need to chew their prey, thanks to the 200 small stones called gastroliths in their bellies that probably aided in digestion. At the same time, some scientists believe that the Styxosaurus used these stones to sink to the ocean bottom in search of particular types of fish. Looks kinda like Nessie to me.
It looks like a prehistoric creature that came from the time of dinosaurs. This scary beast is called the basking shark. It can grow up to 39 feet. People have only reported 3 of them in the past 160 years. The last sighting was in 2015, and before that, about 80 years ago. These sharks sometimes rise to the surface to filter out small animals, such as shrimps and other small crustaceans, when they want to have a nice, tasty seafood dinner. But when there isn't enough grub at the surface, they go down to the depths of almost 3,300 feet, where they tend to stay for months, which is something researchers discovered using satellite tags. Tag, you're it! Now, basking sharks like to spend their time in more temperate waters, but they can migrate long distances. They live across the globe, but in warm tropical or subtropical areas, they won't go near the surface because they're not fans of high temperatures. The lion's mane jellyfish is not that rare, but it's fascinating how large it is. It's the biggest among jellyfish species and the longest animal. Its total length can reach 120 feet. That's approximately 23 feet more than the longest blue whale scientists know about. The jellyfish has around 70 to 150 tentacles, and they all contain huge amounts of neurotoxins that can seriously harm you if you come in contact with the animal. But people don't usually come across this type of jellyfish because it rarely lives near the coast, preferring the open ocean. Generally, you can find the lion's mane jellyfish no deeper than 65 feet below the surface, where it dines on small fishes, zooplankton, and some other types of jellyfish. It uses its tentacles to catch its value male. Hey, you want fries with that? The giant phantom jelly comes out of the darkness and depths of the ocean's midnight zone. Its sun hat-shaped bell reaches over 3 feet across. This bell trails 4 ribbon-like mouth arms that can be up to 33 feet long. This quite rare creature uses its mouth arms to catch unfortunate animals swimming around and not knowing what's coming for them. Giant phantom jelly propels itself through the water with periodic pulses coming from its orange head. It glows faintly and mysteriously in the pitch-black depths. It lives across the globe in all the oceans except for the Arctic. I'm guessing it's too cold. Because of its odd shape, people often call the oarfish the dragonfish or sea serpent. It's about 26 feet long, which makes it the longest bony fish we know about, and lives at depths of 3,300 feet. Oarfish spend most of their time in the deep, dark parts of the open ocean in tropical and subtropical areas. They almost never come to the surface, unless, invited. It's a ribbon-shaped and shiny silver creature with a long red dorsal fin and red oar-like pelvic fins. Its body has no scales and is very thin. The fish can grow to a length of about 30 feet and weigh 660 pounds. Oarfish have really big eyes that help them see better in their dark, scary surroundings. The frilled shark is definitely one of the gnarliest-looking marine animals out there. If you saw it somewhere, you'd probably think you went back to the age of dinosaurs. Yup, the frilled shark is a prehistoric creature because its roots go back 80 million years. This living fossil can grow to be 7 feet long. It got its name from its frilly gills. Even though frilled sharks have the shark part in their name, they swim similar to an eel in a distinctly serpentine way. Its mouth is terrifying. Similar to the maw of the great white shark, it has 300 trident-shaped teeth lined in 25 rows. Hey, come a little closer, huh? Researchers discovered this creature in the 19th century, but people rarely see it, and no wonder. It usually lives at depths of between 390 and 4,200 feet. Most of the time, the frilled shark feeds on squid, swallowing them whole. Its long jaws allowed the frilled shark to gape extra wide and swallow animals half as long as its entire body. Goblin sharks are very rare. Researchers have spotted fewer than 50 of them in more than 120 years. But maybe that's for the best, since we're talking about a pretty scary fella with a narrow snout and sharp teeth. It's also capable of thrusting its entire jaw outward when it wants to catch something. Sounds familiar. As it's lurking through the dark depths of the ocean, a goblin shark sees a small squid that looks quite yummy. The dangerous animal inches toward the squid. When the poor creature notices the predator, it tries to dart away, but it's too late. The shark has already thrust its jaw the whole 3 inches out of its mouth. This jaw is connected to the flaps of skin the shark can unfold. This helps a lot because the goblin shark is a sluggish animal, so it's pretty hard for it to chase its food. After finishing its lunch, the goblin shark puts its jaw back in its mouth and swims away as if nothing's happened. Goblin sharks mostly live at the bottom of the ocean. Like many other shark species, they prefer swimming alone. Here's a silver-colored creature with very rough skin. That's the ocean sunfish, with a total length of almost 11 feet. Its other name is mola. The ocean sunfish is the heaviest of all bony fish out there. People sometimes call it a swimming head because of its bizarre appearance. These creatures have such a weird shape because they're born with a back fin that never actually grows. It just folds into itself as the animal matures and creates a rounded rudder. The sunfish is a bit clumsy. It moves with the help of its mighty fins that allow the animal to swim on its side. This marine inhabitant is a solitary creature. It mostly feeds on zooplankton and jellyfish. The spotted wobbegong is one of the world's rarest sharks. It grows to be more than 10 feet long. It may not look as terrifying as some of its shark relatives, but it's pretty good at catching unsuspecting animals swimming past, mostly during the night. The animal has a spiracle, which is why it can breathe while staying still at the bottom of the ocean. It's motionless most of the time, which is why you can barely notice it. Its flat body and large pelvic and pectoral fins blend in with the underwater terrain. That's why they're so good at hiding. This ability helps when these sharks want to protect themselves too. Wobbegong means carpet shark. They usually live close to the ocean floor in coral reefs, on sandy bottoms, and under piers. People have even spotted the shark in the water that is barely deep enough to cover its flattened body. Now, blobfish lack teeth and bones, so they can't actively hunt. Since they don't have much muscle mass, they can barely move around. Hey, I had a roommate like that once. They get their energy from animals they scoop up from the seafloor. They also know how to conserve this energy. That's how it usually goes with deep-sea creatures. They don't have as much food as those animals that swim closer to the surface. Instead, they have special body mechanisms that allow them to save energy for the times when they don't have much to eat. Pressure at the depths where the blobfish lives is 120 times as high as that at the surface. That's why the bizarre creature looks like a weird gelatinous mass only when you bring it up to the surface. The pressure here is not strong enough to keep its body together. Hey, breaking up is hard to do. The white margin stargazer could compete with the blobfish for the title of the ugliest animal in the sea, don't you think? Now, this animal has eyes on the top of its head, together with an upward-facing mouth which the creature uses to hide itself in the sand. That's where it spends most of its time, with only its eyes protruding from the sand. It chills this way until some small animal passes by. It can lunge at its target incredibly quickly, literally within milliseconds. This creates a vacuum in the water that pulls in a crab, fish, or some other small, unfortunate animal. Another tactic involves venom. This fish has a venomous spine in its shoulder blade that helps with catching other animals and defending itself against enemies. Even though it's not related to the electric eel, the white margin stargazer can generate an electric shock as powerful as 50 volts. Ow! So, a mysterious discovery was made deep in the Red Sea, the so-called death pools. Woo, that's scary. In 2020, researchers embarked on a dive into the Red Sea. The mission spot was in the Gulf of Aqaba, between Saudi Arabia and Egypt. Near the end of their expedition, as they ventured deeper into the darkening waters, they noticed some strange seaweed floating above the seafloor. They decided to use a remotely operated vehicle and investigate it. Suddenly, they discovered these strange, motionless lakes of water within the sea. These are called brine pools. They're basically pockets of salty water deep on the ocean floor. And when I say salty, I mean it. Sometimes they're up to 8 times saltier than the ocean water itself. Mysteriously, they don't mix well with the surroundings. They formed millions of years ago, sometime during the Miocene epoch, back when weird creatures roamed the earth, like me, and deeply buried mineral deposits dissolved into the water. The largest pool spans about 170,000 square feet. Meanwhile, 3 smaller ones are under 107 square feet each. At first, this discovery didn't seem that scary. But here's why they're so horrifying. Not only are they disgustingly salty, they also lack oxygen. Now hold on a sec, isn't that normal for something that's underwater? Well, it turns out the Earth's waters are full of oxygen, and at least half of this element on our planet comes from the oceans. Just like plants on land, marine plants such as phytoplankton, seaweed, and algae munch on sunlight and produce oxygen through photosynthesis. They release lots of it into the surroundings. Marine life then eats half of it, so only about a quarter of the oxygen that we breathe actually comes from the oceans. Just like us, sea creatures need this element to survive. Without it, they can't breathe and support their metabolism to live. That's why these pools are super dangerous for most of them. It's like a puddle of thick syrup for bugs. When they get in, the poor things immediately suffocate and pass away. Which is why the pools are surrounded by a graveyard of marine animals. But let's see how these things can exist in the first place. Have you ever tried making ice cubes from salty water? Spoiler, it's pretty hard. When you add salt, the water gets harder than usual to freeze, a phenomenon that has a funny name, freezing point depression. Oh, that's because salt interferes with the hydrogen bonds between water molecules. As it finally freezes, stuff like particles, dirt, or dissolved salts get pushed out to the sides. As a result, the salt's kind of squeezed out of the ice crystals and gets trapped near the edges in small bubbles or pockets. Something similar happens in the ocean when seawater starts freezing under super cold polar caps. The salt doesn't freeze with the water. Instead, it gets pushed out, forming a super salty cold liquid, the brine. And then it sinks down to the ocean floor. On a large scale, all this process also helps currents to form. Despite being so dangerous, the pools are still full of microbial life, because microbes couldn't care less, they'll survive anywhere. There are literally thick mats of them in the brines. There are also some salt-loving creatures, like shrimps and eels, hovering around the pool's edges. They're being super creepy, waiting to catch unsuspecting prey that ventures too close to the toxic death pool. Ew. Well, it sounds icky, I know. But this discovery gives us some fascinating insights into how life might have originated on Earth. We already know from the evolution theory that we came from the ocean, but now scientists think that life might have begun in the deep sea in some super dark, oxygen-free places. These brine pools are like time capsules. They're one of the closest things we've found to the early Earth. They can tell us the planet's history of earthquakes, floods, tsunamis, and more. For example, they have some traces of rainfall that happened over 1,000 years ago. And they can also help us search for life on other water-rich planets. For example, Mars most likely used to have huge oceans on it. Now, NASA scientists want to send a special instrument called HABIT for a special red planet mission to study things similar to our brine pools. This will tell us more about how life appears and survives in the universe. There is lots of unexplored fascinating stuff like this in the Red Sea. That's why scientists conducted the so-called Decade Expedition and spent around 5 months exploring the place. This expedition was launched by the National Center for Wildlife. They made so many remarkable discoveries that now we've got 77 new research papers. For example, they found over 10 blue holes, incredible underwater sinkholes that host unique ecosystems. They also learned that dolphins can use those blue holes to protect their young from predators. Scientists also found traces of great white sharks, a creepy community of deep-sea lanternfish living in low oxygen conditions, and even a new coral species. It's the most resilient deep-sea corals that also vive just fine without oxygen, like microbes we mentioned. Speaking of which, research also showed us some new ancient thermal vents and large blobs of microbial formations near Farasand Island. Now, can you believe that with all that, we only explored 5% of the ocean? It's divided into several layers based on depth. Each layer becomes darker and more isolated from sunlight as we go deeper. The places that no sunlight can reach are terrifying. Now, the fun, cute layer with dolphins and turtles is called the epipelagic or sunlight zone. It's so tiny, but even this layer is about 650 feet deep. Then we have the mesopelagic or twilight zone. It's the layer of mysterious octopus, shark, and other loners, which extend to about 3,000 feet down. And then the horrors begin after this one. We encounter the bathopelagic or midnight zone. It extends to 13,000 feet below the surface, about a half of Everest above you. Here we have the famous poor blobfish, squids, and anglerfish. Below it is the abyssal zone. It extends to about 20,000 feet deep. Since there's not much sunlight or oxygen, as we mentioned, most creatures here are quite small, like tube worms and shrimp. The darkness continues until we arrive at the scariest place of the planet, the place full of trenches formed by tectonic plate movements, the Hadal Zone. It's named after Hades, the deity of the underworld in Greek mythology. Just like Hades' realm is dark, remote, and guarded, the Hadal Zone is the deepest and most depressing part of the ocean. It starts at depths of around 20,000 feet and can go down to 36,000 feet and more. The famous Mariana Trench also belongs to this zone. Only 3 people in history have ever explored these depths in person, making it one of the least explored and most mysterious places on our planet. However, despite crazy high pressure, near freezing temperatures, and complete darkness, there are still things who manage to survive here. Guys like amphipods, which are critters who feed on dead material sinking from above, and the Hadal snailfish, which lives as deep as 27,000 feet. So scientists used to assume that if there's no sunlight, there wouldn't be that much oxygen around. But one day, a research team decided to measure the levels of oxygen in one of those deep zones. Surprisingly, the levels were super high. They checked the equipment thinking that it was malfunctioning, but nope, all the sensors showed the same thing. Turns out the oxygen was somehow generated by rocks. These small potato-sized rocks on the seafloor are called polymetallic nodules. They're rich in metals like copper, nickel, and cobalt, and they're basically like small batteries. When you put a battery in salt water, it can produce bubbles of gas, a process called electrolysis. In the same way, these rocks create tiny electric currents, which are powerful enough to produce the same gases, splitting water molecules into hydrogen and oxygen. It's the first time we saw oxygen being produced by some non-living minerals. This is what scientists now call dark oxygen. It turned out that about half of large marine species, or megafauna, were living just on dark oxygen alone. All these discoveries are reshaping our understanding of where and how life could evolve. It means that we might be able to find life on other planets or satellites with low oxygen conditions, like Enceladus and Europa, the moons of Jupiter and Saturn, and they have large bodies of frozen water on them. Wow!
You know how they say it's better to just hand over your wallet if you run into a mugger? Instead of surrendering their wallets, sea cucumbers choose to spit out some of their insides to fend off predators like crabs and fish. It's a natural defense mechanism for them, and they quickly grow those organs back in just a few days, thanks to special cells inside their bodies. It's not the only weird thing sea cucumbers do. They can actually breathe through their rear end. They have this thing called a respiratory tree that connects to their backside and sits right next to their intestines. So when they suck in water from their behind, it goes into that respiratory tree, letting them absorb oxygen directly into their fluids. Plus, sea cucumbers are the janitors of the ocean. They munch on whatever gets stuck in the sand on the ocean floor. Once they've eaten, they manage to clean out the sand, leaving it nice and tidy after they do their business. As for the clean sand, the stunning white sand beaches in Hawaii are actually a product of parrotfish number 2. These fish munch on algae from rocks and dead corals, and while they're chomping away, they also grind up the leftover bits of coral in their bellies. When they're done, they move their bowels, and voila! It all comes out as beautiful sand. Not only do they play a vital role in keeping the coral reef ecosystem healthy, but they can churn out hundreds of pounds of this white sand every year. Marine animals are seriously impressive when it comes to holding their breath. Just look at sperm whales and elephant seals. They can stay underwater for a mind-blowing 2 hours. Then there's a Cuvier's beaked whale, which holds the crazy record at almost 4 hours underwater. When you compare that to the human record of 24 minutes and 37 seconds held by pro diver Budimir Shobat, it seems pretty insignificant. But what's the marine animal's secret that helps them excel humans this much? Unlike us, these sea creatures have a ton of hemoglobin and myoglobin in their blood and muscles, allowing them to store way more oxygen. When their oxygen runs low, myoglobin steps up and releases even more. Plus, they can tolerate higher levels of CO2, so they don't feel the need to breathe as quickly. There's even a study that found their myoglobin molecules have a unique charge that keeps them from sticking together, which boosts oxygen storage. And on top of all that, they can slow down their heart rate and restrict blood flow to hang out underwater even longer. Rumor has it that about 540 million years ago, a meteor loaded with frozen octopus eggs smashed into Earth. Sounds like a delirium, but some scientists are entertaining a very questionable idea that octopuses and their cephalopod buddies, like squids and cuttlefish, might actually have some extraterrestrial origins. The thing is, cephalopods have extraordinary DNA that doesn't look like any other DNA on our planet. They've got around 33,000 protein-coding genes in their genome, which is way more than what we humans have. A recent study suggests that their evolutionary story shows some odd traits that might hint at a connection to space, like they could be from some super far-off past, or even the future. The researchers went as far as to claim that modern octopuses could be the descendants of these frozen creatures that hitched a ride on comets and splashed down in our oceans. And why octopuses? Well, they really stand out in the animal kingdom. They can use different tools to build their own houses, and they can even solve everyday problems independently of their brain, as 2/3 of an octopus's neurons are in its arms. These traits seem to have just appeared out of nowhere during evolution. They even tossed around another quirky theory. What if an extraterrestrial virus crashed into early squid populations and gave them a crazy boost in evolution? turning them into the octopuses we know today. Anyways, these are just fun speculations without any hard proof. Now, this funky object is an animal, not a rock. It's called sand dollar. Just look at the shape of its shell. Once sand dollars are exposed to the sun, their shells lose their soft, spiny covering and become bleached white. Back in the day, beachcombers thought these shells looked a lot like big silver coins, kind of like the old Spanish dollar that was about the same size. But if you prefer, you can call them sand cakes instead. These quirky creatures have tiny spines on their surface, and they glide along the ocean floor. They use small tube feet that line the grooves on their underside to grab bits of food like plankton and algae, which they then send to their mouths. Inside, they have 5 triangular teeth that help them munch on their meals. In some Georgia folklore, sand dollars are said to represent coins lost by mermaids. Sand dollars have a unique talent for cloning themselves. They can do this for a bunch of reasons, like when a predator comes around. Some species of sand dollar larvae can actually split in half as a defense mechanism. It takes about 24 hours for them to clone themselves, and the new larvae end up being about 2/3 smaller than the original, which helps them hide from danger. Wait, is that a giant sea hot dog racing through the ocean? Sorta. Some scientists have joked that sperm whales seriously resemble enormous hot dogs. These massive creatures can take quick naps, standing up for about 10 to 15 minutes. They only sleep about 7% of the time, mostly between 6 p.m. and midnight. Sperm whales also have a cool ability to retract and extend their eyes, thanks to a thick retractor muscle around them, but they can't actually roll their eyes in their sockets. Plus, they have the most asymmetrical skull of any mammal out there. Oh, and let's not forget, they have the largest brain of any living creature, weighing in at over 9 pounds. Unlike us humans, if dolphins went into full-on snooze, they'd stop breathing and could drown. So they figured out a genius solution. They let only one side of their brain sleep at a time. This means one half stays awake to keep them breathing and watching out for any potential threats. When they snooze, they only close one eye. If their right brain is resting, their left eye is shut, and vice versa. This unique sleep style is called unihemispheric sleep, and it lets them recharge without ever fully losing awareness. On top of that, dolphins might be using corals and sponges like their own little pharmacies. Scientists have seen them rubbing their bodies against specific types of coral and sponges, suggesting they might be treating skin issues. They've even spotted dolphins lining up to take turns at these spots, using corals like Gorgonian coral Rumphella aggregata, leather coral, and some sponges. What's really fascinating is that researchers have analyzed these corals and found they contain compounds that could help with dolphin skin conditions, which can sometimes lead to infections and lesions. Now, the big question is figuring out exactly how each type of coral helps dolphins, and if it really boosts their health overall. Sea urchins aren't exactly the Usain Bolts of the ocean. They move slowly by crawling with their tube feet and occasionally give themselves a little push with their spines. These little guys have just 5 teeth, which they use like a beak to scrape algae off rocks, which I'm pretty sure is the ocean's version of an all-you-can-eat buffet. But since all that scraping wears their teeth down, they're in a never-ending dental replacement program. Scallops are the underwater equivalent of the world's most confused security cameras, sporting up to 200 tiny eyes on their shells. These eyes are high-tech. They can even adjust their pupils to light. Instead of working like ours, scallop eyes have a unique setup. Light goes through a pupil, lens, 2 retinas, and then hits a mirror made of guanine crystals that reflects it back. Scientists were puzzled about how they see since their main retina often gets blurry light. But it turns out, scallops can change their pupil size by about 50%. Just don't expect them to do it in a hurry, as it takes a few minutes.
Now here's something really neat about orcas. They're expert hunters, and they do it in groups called pods. A pod can consist of up to 40 orcas, forming a very effective hunting team. Interestingly, there are distinct types of pods, resident and transient. Resident pods are more into fish, while transient pods have a taste for marine mammals. But no matter what type of pod they belong to, all orcas have one thing in common: they are master collaborators. They work together using smart hunting techniques that are often compared to the teamwork of wolf packs. Almost 95% of jellyfish's body is made of water. For comparison, the human body is 60% water. It's probably not a surprise since jellyfish don't have a heart, blood, eyes, or brain. The other 5% of their body weight is proteins, muscles, and nerve cells. Jellyfish have been around for more than 500 million years. This makes them older than dinosaurs. These creatures haven't changed much, and today's jellyfish are pretty much like their ancestors. Electric eels have small eyes that are not so effective in environments with no light, so they mostly rely on their electric organs. Those consist of 6,000 cells. Eels use them to stow power, similar to batteries. These creatures use electricity like bats use their radars or dolphins their sonar. An eel can also produce enough electricity to power a panel of light bulbs. There's a small tropical archer fish that can learn to recognize human faces. This fish has an interesting ability to spit small jets of water from its mouth. Researchers showed the fish the image of two different faces placed side by side. One was unknown and the other was familiar. The fish was supposed to spit water at the familiar one. The creature took the right guess more than 80% of the time. There's such a thing as a sea unicorn. That's an animal called the narwhal. Its horn is actually a tooth that can grow up to 10 feet long. Manatees, also known as sea cows, are distant relatives of elephants. Their weight can go up to 1,000 pounds. These creatures are vegetarian and need to eat around 10% of their total weight on a daily basis. That's lots of sea salad. In some cases, manatees share space with alligators, but they get along pretty well. You can even find a photo from Florida where an alligator rides a manatee's back. Frogfish have special fins that help these creatures walk along the sand. They're very useful in shallow waters. A ghost pipefish is hard to see, but once you spot it, you're bound to get really surprised. Its head makes up over 40% of its body. Crabs don't feel like wasting time on such formalities as putting foods in their mouth. That's why they taste it with their feet, which is where their taste buds are. Marine iguanas are the only lizards on our planet that like spending time in the ocean, even though they mainly live on land. They're herbivores that feed in shallow waters and swim like snakes. Iguanas use their long claws to hold onto the bottom when they need to graze. Green turtles can cross over 1,400 miles when migrating. They try to find the perfect spot to lay their eggs. Penguins sort of fly when they're underwater, reaching a speed of 25 miles per hour. More than 5 million years ago, I've heard, I wasn't around then, deep-sea worms and humans had a common ancestor. So we still share 70% of our genes with these creatures, and with sea stars, squid, and octopuses. Now, octopuses are in fact incredibly old. The oldest known fossil belongs to an animal that lived almost 300 million years ago. FYI, this is before our dinosaur buddies roamed the Earth. Wait, there's more! Octopus arms have a mind of their own. That's because 2/3 of their neurons lie in their arms, not in their heads. This means that their arms can problem solve how to open a shellfish, while their owner is worried about other stuff entirely. Talk about ninja-level multitasking. Oh, and like other animals, such as chimpanzees and dolphins, octopuses have proven to be good at maneuvering tools, like picking up old shells and using them as a temporary home. Now, of course, the most intelligent animals on our planet are humans, according to humans. But we don't seem to give pigs enough credit. Pigs are so smart they can play video games. No, not Minecraft. But in a recent academic study, scientists had 4 pigs play a joystick game. They had to manipulate the stick so that the moving ball would hit the wall and then they would get a treat. All 4 pigs did great in the test, which was surprising even to the scientists. Now, pigeons also aced an impressive test. They were trained to differentiate a Picasso painting from a Monet one, which they had no trouble learning. Then they were able to apply this knowledge, identifying works of art they had not previously seen, meaning they really understood the difference between each painter. Poor things are always seen as a nuisance. Now, if we placed kangaroos in an animal's most amazing ability contest, they'd win. It's mainly because they break the four-legged rule. A special species of kangaroo, the red kangaroo, uses its tail to help propel it forward. Now, visually, it has 4 limbs, but in practice, it uses 5. They're biologically built to use their tail as a 5th limb, since it's packed with articulated vertebrae and thick muscles. Of course, it had to be an Australian animal. Deep within the Sahara Desert, you'll find a little creature known as the fennec fox. This huge-eared animal adapted perfectly to survive in its hostile environment. The huge ears help them to dissipate the unbearable heat of the desert, as well as help them to hunt for underground prey. Now meet this guy. Unlike what its name might suggest, the red panda is closer to a raccoon than it is to a giant panda. You'll find a lot of these cat-sized creatures in the Himalayan region, hopping from tree to tree and bundled together trying to keep warm in the harsh weather. They're gentle and friendly like their big panda cousins, and occasionally enjoy eating some bamboo sticks. And then there are bees. Compared to humans, bees' brains are the size of pinheads, yet they are capable of astounding things. Let's say a bee is running low on energy after a long search flight. This bee desperately needs a drop of honey in order to continue flying, but smartly enough, she doesn't need to go back to the hive to recharge. She can ask a fellow beehive mate for a drop of honey directly from this other bee's stomach and continue flying. This type of decentralized system allows them to build highly effective societies, one that bees don't need to push to the queues in front of the honey cells, for example. Every year in the winter, great white sharks that live along the California coastline disappear. It feels as if they take a vacation for 30 to 40 days. The animals go to a point halfway between Hawaii and Mexico. They might do it to get some food, relax, or hang out with their buddies from other areas. The spot is now called the Whale Shark Cafe. Some types of sharks, like makos, whale sharks, or white sharks, breathe in a very specific way. It requires them to swim all the time. They also need to move quickly and with their mouth open. This way, the oxygen can enter and reach their gills. Sea sponges are some of the most primitive animals. They're immobile, don't have a mouth, eyes, bones, brain, heart, lungs, or any other organ whatsoever. And still, they're alive. There's such a thing as a sea unicorn. That's an animal called the narwhal. Its horn is actually a tooth that can grow up to 10 feet long. Manatees, also known as sea cows, are distant relatives of elephants. Their weight can go up to 1,000 pounds. These creatures are vegetarian and need to eat around 10% of their total weight on a daily basis. That's lots of sea salad. In some cases, manatees share space with alligators, but they get along pretty well. You can even find a photo from Florida where an alligator rides a manatee's back. Frogfish have special fins that help these creatures walk along the sand. They're very useful in shallow waters. A ghost pipefish is hard to see, but once you spot it, you're bound to get really surprised. Its head makes up over 40% of its body. Crabs don't feel like wasting time on such formalities as putting foods in their mouth. That's why they taste it with their feet, which is where their taste buds are. Marine iguanas are the only lizards on our planet that like spending time in the ocean, even though they mainly live on land. They're herbivores that feed in shallow waters and swim like snakes. There's something known as the orange cat behavior, and apparently it's not just a meme. So far, scientists have been able to understand that coat color is connected to a feline's gender. And since orange is an X chromosome, orange cats are usually males, like Garfield. The so-called orange cat behavior describes ginger cats as agents of chaos. Again, pretty much like Garfield. However, there haven't been any conclusive studies on whether coat color and cat behavior are truly linked. In terms of vision, mantis shrimps probably have the most psychedelic vision out of all animals. These funny-looking creatures have a whopping 16 varieties of photoreceptors, with 5 of them reserved for the ultraviolet or UV spectrum. Ultraviolet rays are really short wavelengths, which are invisible to humans. The thing science still doesn't understand is how exactly these mantis shrimp view the world around them. Sure, they can perceive a bunch of colors, but they can't necessarily distinguish all of these colors among themselves. It can be that they just see a lot of really vivid, really blurry colors, but we haven't figured out a way to check that out. Now, to say sloths are cute is an understatement. They may be one of the friendliest animals in the jungle, but there's more. If you look closely at their fur coat, you'll notice hints of green. These greeneries are actually tiny little algae that grow alongside sloths. They help sloths to camouflage better in the jungle, but they also nurture them. The little cracks inside a sloth's fur create the perfect environment for algae reproduction, and scientists have found species of algae that don't exist anywhere else in the world. They do get by with a little help from their friends. Deep within the Sahara Desert, you'll find a little creature known as the fennec fox. This huge-eared animal adapted perfectly to survive in its hostile environment. The huge ears help them to dissipate the unbearable heat of the desert, as well as help them to hunt for underground prey.